Okay, so, but, like, I'm looking through its, like, last few levels, and I'm not seeing any, like, legendary stats.
Yeah, because you get master in weapons and spellcasting, but you don't get legendary in either, because you have both. You master both.
Oh, so it's like a monk, you don't become legendary at the thing that you're good at. Oh, keep going!
Like 50-50 whether you lunged at me when I did that.
Hi everyone, welcome to GameGorgon. My name is Jake.
And I'm Krug!
And today we're going to be talking about the Mangus?
Nope.
Mangus.
Very nope.
It's not that thing that you read backwards.
Manga?
It is the new class that is coming out with the Secrets of Magic book. We have already released the Summoner video, if I did my job. As we discussed in the Summoner video, I did the notes for that one, and Krug got to experience it for the first time through the show notes. Yep. This is the opposite. Krug did the notes on this one, and I'm going to learn all about this class.
It's going to be fun.
With you. You're going to see this lovely array of stats that you get.
It's going to be over here, because fuck you.
Or it can be here. I don't care. You can put it wherever you want. The key thing, though, is that you do get to choose whether it's strength or dexterity for its key.
Yep.
And it's 8+ con, so even though it's a front line, it's not that front line.
Yep.
Before we go into the class itself, the only pre-context that I have about this is that you're happy with the changes that they made.
Yeah, it is significantly different from the playtest, and I was going to format this video in such a way that it was like all of the changes. Yeah, and I got to the point where I was like, this is going to be a 3-hour video. I'm not interested in that. Sure. I'm just going to go over it the way it is. If you want to see the playtest stuff, we did a playtest video, right? Or did we just talk about it? I don't remember. Go look at the playtest video, and if you want, I don't think it's that important. This is different enough that that information's basically irrelevant. Just watch this. This is good. There's some bad things. We'll talk about them. It just like every other video in the world. Sometimes you just can't abort.
No, I gotcha.
Remember last video, the Summoner video, when we talked about the Eidolon?
Yes.
And it was just like, Eidolon, everything.
We had 5 pages of notes, and 4 of them were the Eidolon.
Okay, let's talk about Spell Strike. Okay. Spell Strike, for those of you that don't know, is how you as a Magus imbue your weapon or yourself with magic.
Okay.
So instead of casting a spell at somebody, which you can do, instead of casting a spell at somebody, you can cast it into your weapon or into your body, which is the unarmed attack, and then you can use your weapon to deliver the spell.
Okay.
Here's how it works. The action's called Spell Strike, and it takes 2 actions. You're going to cast a spell that takes exactly 1 or 2 actions and requires a spell attack roll. The effects of the spell do not occur immediately, but are instead imbued into your attack. Then make a melee strike with a weapon or unarmed attack. You use the attack's roll result to determine the effects of both the strike and the spell. This counts as 2 attacks for your multiple attack penalty, but you don't apply the penalty until after you've completed the spell strike. The infusion of spell energy grants your strike the arcane trait, making it magical. So if you're like a lower level, you still get the magical thing.
Sure.
After you use spell strike, you can't do so again until you recharge your spell strike as an action, which has the concentrate trait. Or you can also recharge your spell strike when you cast a conflux spell that takes at least 1 action to cast. We'll get to that. Don't pay attention to it right now.
Okay.
So that
is a lot.
was the beginning.
Oh, God.
This is the first time I've seen this in a Pathfinder book.
Okay.
And it might not be the only time that it's been printed this way, but I love it.
Okay.
This is basically a list of kind of like clarification, disambiguation, if you will.
Okay.
It's going over each, like a specific category of thing and how it applies to Spell Strike specifically. The first topic is reach. The coupled spell affects the target using the reach of the weapon or unarmed attack you make your Spell Strike with. For example, if you use Shocking Grasp as the spell component of your Spell Strike, you would affect a creature beyond the reach of your hand if you used a weapon with reach.
Okay.
So the weapon's range wins over the spell's range. A Ray of Frost would only affect a creature within your weapon's reach, even though the spell's range is longer.
It's just my weapon. The spell range doesn't matter. It's only whatever my weapon.
You effectively ignore the spell's range and replace it with the range of the weapon you're using.
Okay.
This is about ancillary effects, things that happen in addition to the spell's normal damaging effects.
Okay.
Right? Your spell still has non-targeted effects that might affect creatures other than your primary target. target, as well as any ongoing effects starting from the moment you hit with the strike. For example, if you were doing some kind of splash attack, it would still deal its splash damage to creatures other than the target. The spell takes effect after the strike deals damage, so you hit with the ability, deal the damage, and then calculate whatever the spell does after that. If the strike has other special effects, the GM determines whether they happen before or after the spell. That is specifically feat related or multi-class or archetype related, whether those things come into play. Like, for example, if you have a fighter that, has a thing that modifies the way that strikes happen for multiple rounds, you can maybe, have a modified spell strike. You can't replace the spell strike with another action. You are just making a strike, But that's ancillary effects. That is, I think, a little bit more permissive than it was in the playtest, and I really like it.
There was a lot of questions about specifically like the splash damage or the bleed or like extended damage. Like that was definitely a question.
Okay, the next category is multiple defenses. So any additional rolls after the initial spell attack, if you're reading the spell that you're using, happen normally. For example, if you need to make a fortitude save after getting hit by the spell, you use the strike to calculate the hit of the spell, and if you hit with the strike, that means you hit with the spell.
Yeah, so
and
there's
then
an
they need
additional
to
save.
make a fortitude save. The strike doesn't matter after the initial hit, right? Slightly different but related. If you have a spell that allows you to attack with it after you make that initial attack, you can still do those things, but you're not using your strike at that point. At that point, you're just using the spell as written, right? So you make your initial attack with your strike, determine whether or not it hits, and then if you're allowed to make another strike on your next turn, for example, you can make that, but that's a normal spell attack roll.
Yeah.
And it has the range of the spell, and it does everything the way the spell's supposed to do the thing. Just ignore the spell strike portion for that. Just read the spell.
What I'm hearing is that you should read the spell.
Usually. Now we're talking about invalid targets and immune targets.
Okay.
Target is an invalid or immune target relative to the spell. Your strike hits the target and behaves normally, and the spell does not affect them. The spell doesn't get to work because the strike hit them.
Now, okay, so an example for this would be an undead is immune to death effects, right? And you have a spell that has a death effect spell, and you hit them. They're immune to death effects. The spell is used up, and nothing happens.
They still take the slashing
They still
damage.
take the slashing damage from the sword.
Presumably.
Now, what about the opposite way, right? What if someone is, let's say, immune to piercing damage?
So, okay, that is, and I honestly really like this. If you hit, something immune to piercing damage, if you hit it, it is immune to the piercing damage. The spell still goes off.
Perfect.
If it's not immune to the spell's effects as well, right?
I just wanted to make sure, because I know that the key thing is that you hit, but most people equate hitting with damage.
Dealing damage. That's not the case. Hitting is hitting. That's not when you... dealing damage is not when the spell takes effect, right? It's when you hit.
Perfect.
That's the only thing that matters.
So
and if a
far.
GM gets on your case about the fact that it's a ghost and that means that the spell doesn't trigger, you remember, your strike, not the spell, your strike has the arcane trait. Tell them to take that and put it up their butts. All right? Tell them bookmark this part of the video, I swear.
I'm looking at the analytics right now. And
are you ready to move on to the next thing?
so we're done with spell strike.
Absolutely not, I was joking. We're going to talk about variable actions. I don't have a good variable action spell in my head. Think of heal, but something that requires an attack roll.
One action, 2 action, or 3 action
exactly.
spells.
That's what we mean by variable action spells. You can't choose the 3 action one because it has to cost exactly one or two actions. Those are the only two. It cannot cost a free action. It can't cost a reaction. No, that doesn't count. It has to be 1 action or 2 actions. So, and then you can use the 1 or 2 action spell. You can choose whichever one you want. And use the effects of whichever one you want. As long as it's one or 2 actions, you're golden. And I mean, they mention this in the thing, but I'd like to think that our audience is smart enough to know without me saying it explicitly. But you just can't use the 3 action one. Just so we're clear.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you've also said that.
Did I really?
Yes, because you said specifically.
You can't choose the 3 action one.
And
well,
then
I'm
you
saying
went
it
into,
again.
You went into the reaction or free action.
I'm saying it again.
Okay. Question: can you use Metamagic?
Probably not.
I'm gonna say you can't, since the next section is
You
about
typically can't use Metamagic with Spell Strike because Metamagic requires the next action you take to be cast a spell, and Spell Strike is a combined activity that doesn't qualify, which is totally fine. I think the reason that they say typically is because they might make more Metamagic stuff down the road, and that might contradict this.
Sure.
But for now, I would just say no. For all the Metamagic that I can think of, it doesn't make sense.
I can't widen my my sword strike.
That doesn't even make sense. All right.
We're still on this. I'm not gonna fall for it. You fool me once, shame on me.
We technically are going to move on right now. Technically.
Fool me twice, you can't fool me again. All right, so let's keep going with the spell strike.
Okay, this is technically not Spell Strike. This is Arcane Cascade, very closely related to Spell Strike because it is a one-action stance that you gain access to at level 1. But the requirements are you need to have your most recent action be cast a spell or make a spell strike.
You cast a spell or use spell strike,
Yeah.
and then as your third action, you could theoretically take Arcane Cascade, but you can only take Arcane Cascade if you've done one of those two things.
Correct.
So this is basically all three of your actions.
You could have technically cast a one-action cantrip
Okay.
instead of Spell Cascade.
Sure.
Or, I'm sorry, instead of
It's just spell strike.
instead of Spell Strike, thank you. The thing that's disappointing me most about this class is
Okay.
this stance.
Okay.
You'll see why.
All right.
When you're in this stance, your melee strikes deal 1 extra damage.
Okay. That's it?
At level 1, that is the end of the thing.
Oh, until you exit that stance?
You can just stay in that stance.
Okay.
So you just deal an extra
Okay.
damage.
So you do spell strike, and then you go into that stance for the rest of the game. Or rest of the combat.
Rest of the game. The rest,
No,
of the,
rest of the game.
The rest of the game. But there's a little bit more detail to talk about.
Okay.
While you're in this... Oh, oh boy. That was...
Sponsored by water.
We will never be sponsored by Nestle.
Oh, no.
Nestle, dude.
No.
Right here for you guys. There is a little bit more nuance, so let's talk about the nuance.
Okay.
This damage increases to 2 if you have weapon specialization, and 3 if you have greater weapon specialization. So it's just scaling, which is okay. Any strike that benefits from the damage gains the arcane trait, so you get to have magical attacks moving forward. Normally your spell strikes are magical, but your normal strikes with your weapon aren't unless you're in this stance. If your most recent spell before entering the stance was one that can deal damage, the damage from the stance is the same type as a damage type that spell could deal. So if it's some kind of fire spell, the damage type is fire. If it's...
And this is at level 1, right?
Yeah.
This whole aspect.
This whole thing's level 1.
That's cool. I like that.
It's neat, kind of. I will say just really quick, I think this part is probably the most neat part. If the spell could not deal damage, if you used a spell that has an attack roll that doesn't deal damage, the stance's bonus damage depends on the spell school. Abjuration or Evocation deal force damage. Conjuration or Transmutation deal the same type as your weapon or unarmed attack. Divination and Enchantment deal Divination, Enchantment, and Illusion deal mental damage. Necromancy does negative damage.
If you're smart about this, and you're attacking, say, like a plant creature, right? And you cast a spell that did fire damage, and then you turn around and do this stance, then all of your melee attacks are going to now do fire. It's going to be counting as fire damage, which is going to go towards its weakness. So I think it's interesting in that sense, because then you're able to, if your character's smart about it, you're able to kind of just boost your overall damage based off of, like, spell choices.
Yeah, no, I think that there's...
It's interesting. I'm not saying that it's phenomenal.
There's a level of interesting here.
I have a feeling that while this is really low and isn't like spectacular, there are going to be ways to improve it or it like make this even better.
Yeah.
And this is just like the baseline starting so that you can expand upon this if this is the thing that you're interested in making the characters. I get that. Milk isn't cool, but chocolate milk is pretty damn awesome.
Chocolate milk's
right?
pretty awesome.
And so like, you know, you got to have milk to have the chocolate milk.
Yeah,
So,
and to be fair, I don't even know where I would begin to change this. You know,
Sure.
like it just the way it is makes sense. It makes sense flavor wise. If you did some fire damage with a spell that was on the tip of your sword before, your sword's still hot.
yeah.
You gotta cut up some guys.
Yeah, I dig it.
You know,
I like it.
I get it.
I like it.
It's flavorful. It's good. It's like mechanically good. Just dealing extra flat damage is always good. Being able to control the type of damage is always good. But it's good. Let's leave it at that.
Are we done with Spell Strike?
For now. I'll give you a break. How about that?
Okay, I appreciate the break. All right.
Next, let's talk about Hybrid Study.
Okay.
Hybrid Study is your level 1 choice. We're still on level 1, by the way. Did you mention we're still level 1?
I only assumed.
Hybrid Study represents, it's very self-explanatory. You are a hybrid character. You deal with magic, and you have martial prowess. Hybrid study is what kind of magic and martial stuff are you good at? What two of those things did you study that makes you cool? So you get the special ability. This is a modification to the way your stance works. A conflict spell, which is again the focus spell flavor for the class.
Yep.
Additional studious spells. Studious spells are interesting. We'll get there in a sec.
Okay.
The hybrid study I want to talk about is Inexorable Iron. Sounded the coolest. That's literally the reason I picked it.
Great band name. They're going to be at the Troubadour this weekend.
When you enter Arcane Cascade stance at the start of each of your turns while you're in that stance, if you're wielding a melee weapon in two hands, you gain temporary HP equal to half your level, minimum 1.
Okay, so this is the big brute boy.
Yep.
This is the
This is the
two-handed
guy who
weapon
uses the big mallet that he has to wield with two hands, and he runs in there and he's like, I'm a caster! And he whacks you with Fireball.
I dig it.
Fireball's not a valid spell. Don't pick Fireball. It's not an attack roll.
You can pick it,
You can
but
try. The next thing we're going to talk about is the Conflict spell. This is, again, folk spell equivalent. This one's called Thunderous Strike. It's one action. It requires you to be wielding a melee weapon in two hands.
Okay.
Most of the things here are going to require you to be.
Sure.
You're going to make a melee strike with your two-handed weapon. Each creature in a 15-foot cone from you must attempt a basic fort save against your spell DC or take 2 sonic damage. On a critical failure, they're knocked prone. The target of your strike must be within the cone or the effect fails. And heighten +1, increase damage by 1.
that's cool.
Yeah. So it's just like a boom.
Yeah.
Isn't that neat? And I also like the fact that it is flat damage.
I figured out why I like some things and why I don't. Is when I can visually apply it.
Yeah.
It's when I think it's really
When you
cool.
can understand why it is the way it is.
Yeah,
in your mind's eye.
Yeah,
of.
it's cool. You've seen movies, you've seen you see this happening, and then when you go back to oh, you get +1 damage. You're like, okay, but I can't visualize.
How do I say that to my players in a compelling way?
Yeah, while they're both base damage, this one's cool and the other one isn't, is because you can visually decide how it works.
Yep. Last thing that your hybrid study is going to give you is studious spells. Chef's Kiss.
Okay.
It's the weirdest implementation I've seen in Pathfinder so
Alright.
far. So strange. Studious spells are spells that are cast from 2 special second level studious spell slots that you have.
Just second level spells.
Well, it scales, but in a weird way. But that's the whole thing. It's just, you get these second level spell slots, and you can only use them for studious spells, and you get a specific studious spell list, and you can cast those spells from the studious spell slots. It's such a weird thing to give its own name. This one just feels weird.
Yeah.
It's so close to the way that the wizard works, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's just so strange.
Okay, so you get 2 spell slots.
Yeah, you get 2 special spell slots called, and I just don't like the name. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't really like the name that much. Studious spell slots don't come into play until level 7.
Okay.
We're just going over them now because we were talking about the hybrid study, and this is the source.
Yeah, it's a part of it. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So at level 7, for all Maguses, regardless of any choices that you made previous to now, you're going to be able to cast Spider Climb, True Strike, and Water Breathing.
Great, because those are very specific to specific things and would not work very well with the one that we just went over.
Well, no, I think they're all trying to give you tools, and I was going to say this at the end, but maybe I will. How about I just do?
The reason I'm saying that is I see them being interesting, but if you're a 2-weapon fighter, Spider Climb's probably not the best one for you.
Sure.
You're probably going to be using True Strike.
I think it's just giving martial characters the ability to do things that sometimes foil martial characters, you know?
No.
These are common, I'm going to escape through the water. No, you're not. I'm going to teleport up here. I'm going to climb after you. You have to put away your weapon if you're using an extra iron, but take it back out again.
The water breathing one, maybe not a 2-weapon, maybe something smaller, something that's easier to move around while you're swimming. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
No. I'm 100% with you. And that's why you also get a hybrid specific one.
Okay.
Right? So there's an inexorable iron specific spell that you get to cast if you are an inexorable iron magus, and that is in large. Make more sense now?
Yep, which increases your range. That's actually cool.
Yeah. Let's go to level 19.
Okay.
We're going to get double spell strike.
Bam!
It basically, yes. You can extend the magic of the spells that you start with spell strike. The next time you spell strike, you can cast the same spell again without expending a spell slot. So you just take the spell, and you put it in the weapon, and you hit, and then you're like, yo, hit, the spell happens again. If you choose to cast a spell, if you choose to cast a different spell with spell strike, or, and this part's my favorite part, you go 1 minute without using the stored spell dissipates harmlessly.
That's interesting. A while ago we did like Witcher, right? I think that this is Witcher.
Oh yeah.
This is
we could redo Witcher with this easily.
I think Witcher should be redone with this, and I still see alchemy as like a subclass that you could easily still add in there, especially some of the mutagens.
I think if we redo Witcher, we should do it with free archetype as alchemist.
Sure.
Dedication.
Yeah.
I think that'd be good.
Makes sense.
Okay, let's talk about some feats.
Okay.
There's certain feat trees that I think you'd expect. There's a tree to expand your spell strike. There's a familiar tree, which I think is kind of interesting. There's some options in there to, specifically increase your abilities with magic and specifically increase your martial abilities, right? So they fall into those categories. I'm going to probably do a lot of spell strike feats because some of them are really good. We're going to start with expansive spell strike, which is level 2. Keep in mind, only level 2. You've adapted a wider array of spells to work with your attacks. Rather than needing to use a spell that has a spell attack roll for spell strike, you can use a harmful spell that can target a creature or that has an area of burst, cone, or line, abiding by the other restrictions of spell strike. When you cast a spell that doesn't have a spell attack roll as a part of the spell strike, it works in the following ways. If your strike critically fails, the spell is lost with no effect. Creatures use their normal defenses against the spell, such as saving throws. If the spell lets you select a number of targets, it instead targets only the creature you attacked with your strike. If the spell has an area, the target must be in that area. If the spell has an area, the target must be in that area. A burst is centered on a corner of the target's square or the square corner closest to the center of the target. A cone or line emits from you and must include the target. If you're not adjacent to the target, e.g. you're using a reach weapon or Starlit Span, which is a feat that allows you to use your strike with ranged weapons. Choose any square adjacent to the target as the source. The spell affects all creatures in the area as normal, but the strike still only targets the creature. That opens up the door for so many. Remember we were talking about Fireball?
Yeah.
Fireball.
Yeah.
You can literally fireball the creature right in front of you, and the fireball will literally hit the creature and everything behind it.
Yeah. And especially if you have...
Or you can include yourself.
Well, yeah, that's if you're using a melee weapon, but if you've gotten the ability where you can use it on ranged weapons, you're now looking at shooting a fireball from an arrow that's hitting a group. That's really cool.
And remember, it doesn't have
class,
to do damage, remember?
Yeah, no, I gotta be honest with you. This is a really cool class, but it is so bloody complicated for one specific ability. With the summoner, it's a complicated thing.
Yeah.
But the Eidolon has so many facets of it. And this is really complicated because the one new interaction that it has added to the game...
It has so many rules around it.
Already.
There's so many things that... And then it's like, oh, hey, remember those rules? Level 2, let's go tell them to fuck themselves.
Yeah. At level 4, you can take one called Emergency Targ, which I assume has a meaning behind it, but I don't know what the word Targ means.
We're also assuming that it's pronounced that way, but it might not be.
Yeah. Either way, it's a reaction.
Yep.
If you are hit by a spell attack or if you are hit by an attack, you can, and you're carrying a shield on you, or you have the shield spell prepared, you can use your reaction to either raise your shield or cast shield on yourself.
The bonus you get from either casting the spell or raising the shield applies to the thing that hit you.
Exactly.
Which is like clean. The reason I wanted to talk about that one was because it's just like, it shows the versatility of the flavor of the class, right? Either you're like, I'm going to decide to use this, or like, no. This is where magic comes in. You can play it however you want. You can be offensively martial exclusively, and then exclusively defensively magical, or the other way around.
So I know that this is not the place to do this, but I'm going to do this. I ruined a campaign in Pathfinder 1st Edition because I built this class, the Magus in Pathfinder 1st Edition, and my GM was so angry with it that he TPK'd us.
What?
Because he just didn't like it. He just didn't like the...
Was this that one guy?
Yeah.
At level 10, you can choose Rapid Recharge. This is just a free action that allows you to recharge your spell strike. Remember, you don't recharge your spell strike for free.
Yeah.
You have to do it as an action. Now, you can do it as a free action. So
That's really strong.
That's more down the spell strike tree, right? You're slowly removing restrictions.
Yeah. So for the Capstone, you pick something really simple, really easy, something short.
Word 1 spell, 3 actions, feat 20. Prerequisites, just spell strike. Requirements, your spell strike is charged. You combine the might of a multi-target spell with a whirling flurry of attacks. You use Spell Strike, making a melee strike against each enemy within your reach instead of against one enemy. If your spell can affect multiple targets, your spell affects all foes you hit, not just the first target, up to the spell's normal maximum targets. If you strike more foes than the spell could target, choose which foes are affected by the spell. Each attack counts towards your multiple attack penalty, but it doesn't increase until you've made all your attacks. If you use Expansive Spell Strike to spell strike an area spell, apply the area as described in Expansive Spell Strike, choosing one of the creatures you strike to determine the area and whether the spell fails due to a critically failed strike. If you use Expansive Spell Strike to spell strike with a targeted spell, each creature you critically fail to strike is unaffected by the spell, but the spell isn't lost completely from a single critical failure. You can use this activity with only melee strikes, even if you have the Starlit Spin, Hybrid Study, or similar ability, which allows you to use Spell Strike with ranged weapons. That is that.
It's a lot.
You just stand inside a giant cluster of enemies, and it's like you fireballed yourself, but you don't take any of the damage. You just deal the damage to the people around you.
I like it. I think it's cool. I think it's flavorful.
Yeah.
I honestly, I feel like I have to reread this class like 5 more times to really get a grasp on it.
I think the big downside, because it does sound really strong when you're just talking about it, I think the big downside is a lot of it is prerequisite based. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of things where you have to pick a specific hybrid study, or you have to pick this other feat. Like I think the feat structure is really, really rigid, as opposed to like Monk. There's like 1 or 2 upgrades for each stance, and maybe like some key things get an upgrade or something. But most of the time, most levels, there's like 1 or 2 new things that also have upgrades a little bit further down. So there's a lot of like short little tufts of, but these ones are just like Spell Strike, and this one's for magic stuff. Really long chains of, and maybe they're like, instead of being really long chains one after the other, it's just one central nexus with a lot of things coming out of it. Sure.
Yeah, your prerequisite is at level 2, and then you can take.
You have to have picked the tree one, the tree hybrid study, whatever it's called, and then you can pick all these other things as you level. So it's a little bit restraining in that regard, like basing your feat choices off of your level 1 choice. It's way worlds better than the previous iteration of this character.
Yeah, because I remember it was like 2 actions, and then you still had to make an attack.
I think it was something like that.
Which was like, cool, I spent my whole round. I got to spend 3 actions to do this.
We were like, oh, this isn't useful until level 19, where you can use it again.
Yeah.
I remember us saying that. I don't remember why. I'm probably going to put a clip in here because it was so... We were so mad about, or not mad, we were so confused about why they made those choices. And now it's just like, this is what I felt it should have been. You know what I mean? And that's why it's a playtest.
That's why surveys are important, and giving your opinions and letting them know, because it's just going to improve the game.
Yeah, this is, if there's any class that makes me realize that they listen to all that feedback, it's definitely this one. Like, I'm sure if I had paid, very close attention to anything else, I would have been like, oh, they did this and this. But this one, it's so blatantly obvious that they were like, hey, good idea.
Speaking of giving your opinion, why don't you head down in the comments and let us know what your thoughts are about the Mangus manga. And while you're down there, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and if you want to, hit the bell icon to get notified for all of our content. You can reach me on Twitter at IndigoQT.
And you can talk to me on Twitter at QueueQT, or you can talk to both of us at _QueueTimes on Twitter, or you can talk to both of us on Discord. We have a Discord that you can join, and it's just open to the public. You can come and say hi and talk and do whatever. We also have a live play Discord, which you can join on our Patreon, link in the description. You only have to pay one time, $5? I don't remember. $5. And then you have access permanently, even if you stop paying us money. And that's a live play server where we do role play by post. It's very fun, very enjoyable.
They do like 28 games a month.
Yeah.
It's a lot. I can't keep up.
Yeah.
So they do play by post.
They play more than we make GameGorgon videos.
Yeah. Until next time, everyone. Bye.